What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. Today, I have prepared something very exciting for you. Let's go ahead and see what are we going to learn and what are we going to build in this tutorial. Today, we are actually going to build an Instagram clone using React Native Expo, Expo Router, Supabase, Cloudinary, and a lot of other tools and libraries that I would use today to build a production-ready application. So, let's go ahead and see what is the tech stack that we're gonna use for this build. On the front end, definitely we're gonna use React Native, and React Native is recommended to be used with a framework. The framework of our choice is going to be Expo, and we're also going to use Expo Router as a navigation library. We are going to try a new library for styling, and this is NativeWind. If you're coming from web and have experience with Tailwind CSS, then it's going to be super easy for you to work with NativeWind because NativeWind is basically Tailwind for React Native. You're gonna see, if you're new to this, it's going to be a bit different, but it's a learning opportunity to see a different way of styling components. And I'm super excited about this one. I've been meaning to try it out for a very long time. Going on the backend, because this is going to be a full stack tutorial, we're gonna use Supabase. Using Supabase, we are going to manage the authentication and also the database layer and the API to query the post of the users, to upload a new post, and so on. Then, because Instagram is so heavy on the media side, on Instagram, basically you're sharing a lot of photos, a lot of videos, and when building such an application, if we are not optimizing the media, like the images and videos, then our application is going to be super slow. Like media, unoptimized images are one of the worst performance drawbacks or hits that your application will get, and your application will feel very, very slow if you're loading full size, like 10 megabytes images in your feed, for example. In order to improve that and in order to optimize our images on the fly, we're going to use Cloudinary. Cloudinary is actually sponsoring today's video, and with Cloudinary you can store, you can optimize, you can process your media files such as images and videos with a very easy to use API. More recently, Cloudinary launched their React Native SDK, and today we're gonna give it a try and see how we can use it in our application to not only optimize the images to send the right size of the image to the client, but also how to do some other transformations, such as a very smart crop that would take a large photo and crop the photo by focusing on the person face in order to display, for example, an avatar, by applying filters, and a lot of other transformations that are made possible by Cloudinary. Thank you very much, Cloudinary, for making this video possible. And if you haven't tried it yet, you're gonna have an opportunity to try it in an application today in this tutorial. We're gonna get to it a bit later in the video. I also prepared for you the step-by-step guide. You can access it following the link in the description. I'm going to also open it somewhere here. Here is the Instagram guide, and we're gonna follow it in this tutorial to implement everything, starting from setting up a project, all the way to the UI, all the way to integrating the backend, the Cloudinary optimization, authentication database, and so on. So make sure to follow the link in the description, open up the guide on the side, you're gonna need it. And if you're ready, I'm also ready, we can get started. I don't have all my setup, so everything is very manual for me. I'm streaming today from Moldova, from my home country. And yeah, I don't have my home office, but I'm very excited to get started. Hello everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? So, looking in our guide, the first step is going to be to set up a new project. For that, we're going to use Expo, and specifically the Create Expo app tool. Let's go ahead and open a new terminal. Mirk, hello, thank you very much. Let me zoom in so that you can see it as well, but I'm not sharing the screen. So from the guide, the first step is to set up the project. Let's go ahead, open up a terminal, navigate to the place where we keep our projects, and here let's go ahead and initialize a new project using npx create expo up. I also like to do at latest to take the latest version of create expo app tool, and then we need to give it a name. I'm gonna give it Instagram, and very important, let's also write -- template in order to start with a blank template. Nowadays Expo is starting with some default components and screens, and I would really like to show you how we can do everything starting from scratch and explain everything on the way. So on this menu, just go down until you select the blank TypeScript. Let's press enter, and this will initialize our new Expo project. If this is the first time you're building React Native applications with Expo, in terms of the environment that you have to set up on your system, it's really minimal for building Expo application. The only thing that you need is notejust. Where is it? You need notejust, so if you go ahead and do node -- version, I'm using 18 at the moment. You need minimum 18, and that's most of the things that you need. Then you can use the npx command. npx will automatically install the create expo application to generate a new project, and after that we will see when your project is ready. Perfect. Let's open it up in our editor of choice. In my case, that's Visual Studio Code. So I'm gonna simply say code and the name of our project, which is Instagram. This will open a Visual Studio Code. I don't need the terminal anymore. I'm going to position this one so that you can see it better. Something like this. Before we jump into the files and folders, let's go ahead and open a terminal. You can do it from the top. Oh, come on. Or using the shortcut. I'm gonna open the terminal here, and let's write npm start. This will execute expo start, which will start the development server, and soon you should see a QR code like this. Now, the easiest way to run this application is by downloading the Expo Go application. Expo Go, it's available both on Android and iOS, and then scan this QR code using your physical device after installing the Expo Go application. Then you're gonna see your application running on your physical device, and that's everything you need to build and test Expo applications. I'm actually going to run it on iOS simulator by pressing I. You can also do that on Android emulator. Our application is going to work both on iOS and Android. But to run it on simulator and emulators, for example, for iOS, you need to have Xcode installed and set up. For that, you need a macOS. But for Android, you can do that on both Windows and macOS and also on Linux. But for that, you need to have Android Studio set up. So here, you need a little bit more configuration and environment setup to run it. But if you don't have that, just use Expo Go on your physical device and you're good to go. Now, as you can see, I have a simulator running, and we should see the welcoming text. It tells us to open up app.tsx file, and we can find this file in the root folder. And if we go ahead here and we see the text and we update it to hello world and hit save, it's going to auto refresh and apply these changes on the simulator or on the device. And if we see that, that means that everything is set up fine and we can continue to the next step. Hello Najib from India. Hello JavaScript Expanse. Is Supabase really good or is just the video sponsor? No, Supabase is not sponsoring this video, but I've been using it in most of the recent applications, and it's really good because it's built on Postgres, and yeah, Postgres is a great database. Good luck with the application. Have fun at home. Thank you very much. Harsi is saying you've been an inspiration. Thank you, appreciate that. Hello Charles from New York. Hello Rogelio, how are you doing? Hello Mohammed. Hello Sarah, Krishna and Matthew. Cool theme, the theme name, I think it's Material Darker. What do I need to know before starting the Devember playlist? At least some JavaScript, and then just jump into any tutorial that we have. I'm trying to keep them accessible for anyone, no matter your experience. Anyway, so let's continue the tutorial. We have set up our project. The next step is going to be to set up Expo Router. I'm gonna open Expo, the installation guide. You can click it here in a new tab. And we're going to use Expo Router as our routing library. Expo Router is the first file-based navigation system, which means that we will simply create files and Expo Router will set up the screens for us. It's if you're coming from web and you've been using file-based navigation systems such as the Next.js one, then it's going to make a lot of sense for you. But I'm going to explain step by step what's happening behind the scenes. Expo Router is also built on top of React Navigation, and if you have experience with React Navigation, you're gonna reuse a lot of the knowledge that you have there, for example, to configure some of the screens or some of the navigation, some of the stack options and so on. But first, we need to install it. So let's open the documentation, following the link from the guide, and let's scroll down until we see manual installation. The first step is going to be to install the dependencies, such as Expo Router and the other dependencies it needs. So let's copy this command and let's come to our project. Let's open the terminal. And because in the first terminal we have our server running, let's press plus to open a new one, and we will be able to navigate from one to another. And now we can paste the command to install Expo Router and the rest of the dependencies it needs. While it's installing, let's go back to the documentation to see what's the next step. And the next step is in the package.json, we need to change the main entry to point to Expo Router. So let's copy that and let's open package.json. And the main is here, which now points to app.entry. We will have to update it to point to Expo Router and make sure to have like the comma at the end. Let's save. Let's go back here. Step 3 is to add the schema in app.json, and let's open app.json, and somewhere inside the Expo configuration here, I usually add it after the slug, let's add the schema or the scheme. Let's call it notjust.dev. And this is the scheme that is being used for the deep links, and Expo Router will automatically configure deep links for us. Let's scroll down for the next step. Yeah, we can actually install the React Native Web and React DOM, and we're gonna see if maybe we're gonna run our application on web as well. So by installing React Native Web and React DOM, we're going to support web, and we're going to be able to run our application on web as well. Let's see what extra. I think this one is by default, but we can do that as well. In app.json for web, we need to change the bundler to Metro. App.json for the web, we need to say, hey, bundler, use Metro. And I think the last step, and maybe this is actually added automatically in the babel.config, We need to make sure that it's using Babel preset Expo, and I think that's actually the case. If we check babel.config, it's using Babel preset Expo, so we don't have to do anything. That's it. Now we just need to restart the server. And I'm going to go back to the terminal that is running our development server. I'm going to stop it so that we can start it and clear the cache. So for that, I'm going to run npm start. I'm going to do double dashes space dash C for clear. And we're going to see here a warning saying that the bundler cache is empty and it's rebuilding. That's exactly what we need because we changed a lot of things on the Metro side. So now if I'm going to reload our application, we see that it's loading the new entry. It's a bit slower at the beginning because it builds from scratch and later it caches. Now we should see this welcome screen. This is the welcome screen from Expo, and we see it whenever we don't have yet any screens created in our application. The way Expo Router is working is it's looking into the app directory, and every file in that directory becomes a screen. Well, almost every file. We're going to talk about that later. So let's go ahead and define this app directory and define the first screen. You can create the app directory directly in the root folder, but I really like to keep all the source code in a separate folder called source. And in this source, we're going to have the app directory. We're also going to have later the components. I created it so that we can see that it's side by side, and other source files for the application. Okay, now that we have this app directory, let's simply go ahead and create the index.tsx file. And the index in the app directory becomes the home screen, or the screen with a URL /, the first screen that we render. If we simply export here a component, export default function home, and if we return, for example, a text saying hello world, make sure to import text from React Native, and if we're gonna reload the application by double pressing R, Expo Router will check the app directory and we'll see the index file, and we'll make this index file the root screen. So just by creating this file here, Expo Router created a screen for it, which is also navigatable, like we can navigate here later. It's not pre-recorded. No, it's not pre-recorded. He's not even looking at the chats. I'm looking at the chats, guys, from time to time, but I really like to focus and to deliver a very cohesive experience so that even if you are watching this later, you can follow it together with me without me getting distracted every single minute from what I'm trying to explain. But from time to time, I'm stopping and I'm gonna answer your question if you have them. So feel free to write them here. Is React Native CLI outdated or something? Because in YouTube everyone is using Expo. No, React Native CLI is not outdated. React Native CLI is not the recommended way of building production applications or building applications, because even the Meta team that is behind React Native, they're recommending using a framework. And a framework, in this case we're using Expo, is helping us in a lot of situations with upgrading, with managing the libraries, with managing the native side code and so on. So it's either you're building a framework yourself or you're using a framework. Hello, Roman from Ukraine. How are you doing? I think the industry is using CLI. I don't think so. I mean, a lot of legacy projects are still using CLI, but the new stuff that are being built is mostly using Expo. People are saying that it's a pre-recorded video. No, it's not, guys. I'm not. Krishna is saying I'm not able to learn React Native at all. I'm trying for 6 months. Please help. What are we trying to do? Like, what's the method you're trying to learn it? Krishna, check out the tutorials on our channel. I'm trying to make them super clear and simple. Later, I can recommend you some very beginner-friendly tutorials. Anyway, let's continue. We have our home screen here. And for example, if we're gonna create a different screen, for example, I don't know, about.tsx, and if I'm gonna copy paste the same code to about, changing simply the name and calling it about us, then let me open Expo Go. I don't know why it's closed. Then from index, if I'm going to go ahead and render here a link instead of a text, a link from Expo Router, and specify that the link should lead to /about us. Check what's happening if I press on this about us. Actually, it's going to go there, which has about us page. Here, the button, let's say, go to about us. If I reload, I see go to about us. If I press it, I'm on the about us page. So as you can see, just by creating these files and exporting a component from them, Expo Router will set up the screens, and later we can use this link component from Expo Router to navigate to that file. And the link to that file is going to simply be the name of the file. Or later on, if we have like folders, it's going to be, for example, /folder / another folder, and then / the name of a file, similar to how you would navigate on a static website where you have like HTML files, for example. For now, I don't need that one here. I just wanted to show you how that is done. I'm going to move back to our text hello world. And what I want to do right now is I want to also showcase the layout file. I told you that everything in the up directory are screens, but actually there is one more specific file that we can add in the up directory. And that one is the _layout.tsx. The _layout is the file that is going to wrap around our screens. The file that will define the shared UI elements and the shared logic between multiple screens. Think about a tab navigator. The tab navigator, we have different screens for every tab, but the actual tabs, they are shared, like they do not change, they stay static. That's why we need a layout file to define like the shared UI elements and the shared logic between all the screens. And that's why we need a layout file. The layout file in the up directory is usually called the root layout, export default function root layout, because this layout is going to be wrapping around any screen in our application. So no matter where you are in the application, you are going to be inside the root layout. So here is a good place to define like global providers and so on. If we don't return anything, then we're gonna see a blank screen, because basically the first step is we are rendering the layout, and the layout tells like what to render next. If we want to tell the layout like go ahead and render the screen that you're supposed to render, we can do that by rendering a slot. The slot is imported from Expo Router. The slot is very similar to the children property. It's basically take everything that you want to render and render it here. And as you can see, the hello world is somewhere there at the top. If instead of a slot you decide to render a stack, then you're going to render an actual navigator. And right away, you're gonna see that it already has the, how's it called? The stack, the header at the top with the name of our file, which is called index. That's as simple as it is. Like you render a stack in the layout, it specifies, okay, I need to render a stack. You can import tabs, and if you replace stack with tabs, then you're gonna have a tabs at the bottom for index and about. 2 pages, index and about, because we have 2 files. And if you simply duplicate the about, you're gonna have a third tab here. Super simple, super handy. Let me go ahead and actually remove the tab about us, delete. And now that we understand a little bit better how the screens are created, how the layout is created, I will also show you, maybe I'm gonna go here back to a stack navigator for the root layout. But for the home screen of our application, I will create a new folder, a folder that will contain all the screens that will be all the screens for our bottom tab navigator. Basically, after the user is signed in, after the user created an account, he is going to see the bottom tab navigator. So let's create a folder called tabs, and by putting it inside the brackets here, the parentheses, we make sure that we simply group the screens inside the tabs, for example, index.tsx and so on, but we do not affect the URL. So the URL is not going to get affected. In the tabs, I'm going to create the layout for this folder. So let's call it _layout.tsx. Here, let's export default function tabs layout in order to create the nested tabs navigator. And let's render the tabs because we want this folder or the screens in this folder to be rendered inside the tab navigation. At the moment, we do not see it here because by default, our application is rendering the index file. If, however, we want from the index file, like when we go to the home screen, to automatically go to the first tab here, we can actually redirect the user from the home screen to the tab navigator. The thing is that the index in the app is the home screen and it always should be there. We cannot replace it because you should always have that /URL. But from that /URL, we can, by returning a redirect component from Expo Router, we can redirect them to /tabs/. So now if I reload, what do we have? Tabs, maybe without the last slash, let me check. Maybe tabs index.tsx, where I don't have anything inside the index. Yes, that's true. If we're not exporting anything from tabs index, we do not have a screen. So I'm gonna copy something like from the about page to our index in feed, for example. And if I redirect to /tabs now, yes, now it works. So now if I reload the application, what's happening is we are opening the index, the home screen, we are getting redirected to /tabs, we are looking in the tabs, and we see the index file. And that's what's rendered here. We have some duplicated headers because one of the header, the one with tabs at the top is coming from the root layout here, and the other one is coming from the actual tab navigator. If we want to hide one of them, for example, I'm going to go into the layout, I can hide all of them by giving here to the stack some screen options. And I'm going to say header shown false. That will hide the first header, and we're left only with the header that is coming from the tab navigator. Okay, that's the structure that we actually want. And if you have experience with React Navigation, you're going to see that these screen options, these are actually React Navigation screen options because this stack is coming from React Navigation. And the screen options will be applied to all the screens in a stack navigator. But if we want to adjust only one screen, we can do that as well. Let's see how we can do that by going to tabs, layout, and my goal is to change the title of the index page. To do that, I'm going to expand here from a self-closing tabs to opening and closing tabs like this, because I want to adjust some properties of some tabs.screen. So by rendering tabs.screen, we can target some of the screens here. We target them by giving the name here, which represents the name of a file. For example, index in this case. Now we are targeting that screen, and we can send here some options such as header, title, and we can call it, I think on Instagram it's called for you. This is going to be our feed. If I reload, we see for you. Perfect. That's how we can change the options of specific screens. And more information about what options you can change, send there, check out the React Navigation documentation. For example, something else that I can adjust here is the icon, I think. So tab bar icon. If I send here a component that will return something, I have that in the guide as well. I have the font awesome. Let me copy it from here. Oh, let me actually simply, yeah. I want to render an icon in the bottom tab navigator. First of all, let's go ahead and find that icon by going to Expo icons, Expo vector icons, and opening the icons.expo.fyi. Here I'm going to filter by only using font awesome, and I'm gonna search for home. We have this home, I'm not sure why it's not loading, but if we press on it, here it shows how we can import it first. So let's copy that in our tabs layout. And at the top, let's import the font awesome. Now let's also copy the way we render the font awesome icon and render it by sending it to the tab bar icon like this. So tab bar icon is a function that is rendering the icon home. And just like that, we see it at the bottom there. The color can actually be dynamically taken from this function if we destructure color here and send it to the color of icon. Because it's going to be dynamic, as you can see, in this case it's black, we can adjust that by sending here to the tabs screen options and tint, something like tint, tab bar, tint color. What do you think? Is it black? Let's see. No. In the guide, what do I have? Tab bar active tint color is the option that will change the color of the active tab bar here at the bottom. So you can do it, I don't know, pink, and the active item is going to have this color, because we also dynamically send it here. Because if we add another tab here by duplicating the index from the tabs and renaming it to new, and then duplicating it once again and renaming it to profile, we created 3 tabs at the bottom for home, new, and profile page. That's how simple it is to add new screens, for example in a tab navigation or in general in Expo Router. Let's go ahead and also adjust some of the icons. And before I do that, I also want to hide the label of the tab bar here. So in the screen options of the tab, I can send here hide, or how is it called? Tab bar label, tab bar show label, false. If I do that, now we only display icons and not labels. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and by duplicating this tab screen, let's adjust the title and the icon for the other 2 screens. For example, the second screen here is called new, so I'm going to change the name here to new. I'm going to change the title to create post, and the tab bar icon is going to be something like plus square O. Plus square O. And that's going to be a plus sign, perfect. And let's do that once again. I'm gonna copy it, paste it, change the name to the name of the file, which is profile. Profile, let's call the header title, and the icon is going to be what? User? Okay, user, that's good. I like how it looks. Maybe you can increase the size to 26 of all the icons. Yeah, maybe now it's better. And we have the 3 tabs that we need here. Perfect. I think that's it with setting up our basic structure of application with different screens, with a tab navigation. And for that reason, let's go ahead and do a git add, git commit -m, install Expo Router, and set up the tab navigation structure. You're gonna have access to the source code so that you can check it later as well. Okay, so that was our tab bar. Let me check if we have everything. We installed Expo Router. We created the home page. We set up the root layout and we learned about the layout and how they're working. And we set up the tab navigator with 3 tabs, the home, new, and profile. That's what we have here. In the tabs, we have index, which is our home or feed, new, which is our new page, or we can actually new. As you can see, the name of a function or the component doesn't really matter, so it didn't give us any problems. What matters is the name of a file. Create post. Let me just update it so that it's more clear. Profile screen. Profile screen. And this one is feed screen. Okay, now we have different titles and pages. Perfect. Are you going to use any UI libraries such as Tamagui or React Native Paper? I'm going to use a styling library, and that is going to be our next step. We're going to use NativeWind, which in very simple words is Tailwind CSS for React Native. If you have experience with Tailwind CSS, then it's going to be super easy for you to use Tailwind, because we are going to use basically all the same classes as we are using in Tailwind in React Native. Tailwind is super popular on the web. I'm using it to build our notjust.dev website, and I really love it because it's super easy to style with Tailwind. You just write some classes such as PT6 for padding top 6, or W24 for width 24, or background and the color, and everything is automatically applied. You're gonna see how it works in a second. We're gonna first install and set up NativeWind in React Native, and then we're gonna start styling using it. I have a problem with NativeWind. It throws an error saying that the create function does not exist. NativeWind now is being upgraded to version 4. It's going to come with a lot of bug fixes, but I think it's still, the version 4 is still in beta. I'm not sure if, yeah, there is still work in progress for the version 4, but the version 2 has been quite stable and used in the industry. Hello Suprio, how are you doing? Rap lyrical, yes, this is live. Okie dokie. Okay, so we have one more library to configure, and then it's going to get exciting. Because right now we are just setting up everything to make sure that we have everything ready to actually build our screens, our components, our user interface, our functionality, and so on. The next library that we are going to use, as I mentioned, is NativeWind. Go ahead and open the documentation through the guide by following that link, and make sure you are on the version 4 documentation, because if we just go to NativeWind, then you're going to be currently on the version 2. Maybe if you're watching it this tutorial later after the video is published, maybe the version 4 is going to be already the default documentation. If not, we can go, for example, to the Quick Start Expo, and here there should be the NativeWind what? Please upgrade to NativeWind v4. So let's just press on this one, or go to nativewind.dev/v4, and we're gonna go to the Expo Router to check the documentation on how to install it together, like in an Expo Router project. So, NativeWind, let's go ahead and start the installation guide. I'm gonna choose Expo here, and I'm going to copy the command from here. NativeWind, where is it? Let me close everything like this, clear, and let's start by installing NativeWind. React Native Reanimated, it's a peer dependencies on NativeWind to run some animations. And we also need Tailwind CSS as a dependency, because at build time, we are using Tailwind CSS to parse and create our styling. Let's go back to the documentation to see what else do we need. We actually don't need to run pod install because we are using Expo Router, so skip that. Next step, set up Tailwind CSS. I don't think I will run Tailwind CSS in it because I can simply create a file called Tailwind config.js. We're gonna create that file in the root folder to configure Tailwind. And the content of that file, we can copy it from here. And the only thing that we need to check is this note. We need to update the content to target all our files that will have source code. So in our case, I'm going to replace the app with src, and with this syntax, we are basically targeting any JavaScript, GSX, TS or TSX file that can be found in the source directory, no matter how deep. Maybe if you only have application and components and then some other folders that you don't need to be included in this Tailwind, you can add them separately here, like source, then /app, and then another entry source components. But for simplicity, I'm going to leave here just the source directory and apply this configuration to all the files in the source directory. I think that's actually easier. So not to confuse you, just use this URL. Let's go back, and the next step is going to be to create the global.css file. This is where we are going to, we also need to create it in the root folder, and that's where we are going to import the Tailwind code, like the base, the components, and the utilities. You don't have to understand a lot here because this is just configuring it. We do it once and then we kind of forget about it. Later, we're gonna just have to learn how to use it. Let's go ahead to step 3 to add the Babel preset, but make sure to select the latest SDK version or the SDK version of Expo that you're using. By checking package.json, I'm using 51. So here it's 50 plus. What do we need here? We need to copy these two lines. The Babel preset Expo that now will have some options, and the NativeWind /Babel. Let's go to our project and open babel.config. And in these presets, I'm going to remove Babel preset Expo, leave this array, and paste here the two lines that we copied from there. We pasted back the Babel config Expo, but we also have some configuration here for the GSX import source, and we added another preset for NativeWind. Moving on, we need to do some changes to the metro, and again, I'm going to select SDK 50 plus. And here, what do we need to check? First of all, if we look, we do not have a metro config file here. We can either create it manually, or we can run this npx expo customize metro.config.js. I'm going to copy that command, I'm going to open the terminal and run npx expo customize metro.config.js. That created the metro config file here. And let's see what do we need to change. Well, we need to import the with NativeWind here. So let's copy this line in our code, import it below the get default config, and we see that it uses this with NativeWind in the module export part. So we can actually copy the whole line here and replace our module.export. This is where we are linking Metro with a global CSS file that has like the code from Tailwind. Again, if you don't understand this part, it's not crucial to understand. This is just configurations, setting everything up. Later, using it, it's much easier. Fifth step, we need to make sure to import the CSS file in the global layout by simply calling import. So let's go to source, application, layout, not in the tabs layout, but in the up layout, which is our root layout. From here, we can go ahead and do import, dot dot to go one directory up, another pair of dot dot to go in the root directory, and here we have global.css. Save. Let's go back, and that should be everything we need. But in order to add some TypeScript configuration, we can go ahead and create a file called NativeWind env.d.ts. Just copy that name from the documentation. And with triple slashes, add this code here to reference the NativeWind types. That's it. That's everything that we need to do. And if everything worked, I think we're gonna be good to go. To test it out, let's go ahead where we are running our project. Let's stop the server and let's rerun it with the --c to clear the Metro bundler. We did a lot of changes to the Metro, to Babel, so we need to make sure that we clear the cache, and then we can run it again, or we can open it again on our device. I know, it's a lot of configuration, a lot of files that we are doing, but as I said, we do it once, and then we reap the benefits of using it. So now it's running, we don't have any problems, but how do we test, or how do we see how we can style something? Let's go on, for example, application tabs index, which is our feed here. And if I'm going to simply add a class name to our text component and say that this feed should be font 3XL, I don't know all the properties, but maybe text 3XL, that's already better. We see that the size of the text increases. If we do font-bold, the font becomes bold. If we do text blue, and here we give it a hue like 500, the text will become blue. If we put this text inside a view, let's put it inside a view. Make sure to import view from React Native. We can give this view again a class name. We can give it BG for background, and here we can give it a, I don't know, a slate, like a gray color. We can give it flex 1 to make sure that it is full screen. We can give it items center to center of items in the middle. We can give it justify center to center it horizontally in the middle, and see how fast it is to style with this. It gets a lot of, it takes a bit of time to learn all of these classes that we need to apply, and the documentation where you can look for them is going to probably be, the best documentation is going to be the actual Tailwind CSS documentation. Because as I said, NativeWind is Tailwind CSS for React Native. So here, go to Tailwind and search. If we need to add margin, we're gonna search margin, for example, and we're gonna see what class do we need to apply for the margin. For example, M0, that's margin 0. We can do MB will be margin bottom, ML will be margin left, and so on. So if I go ahead for this view and add M10, it's going to add 10, not actually 10 pixels, because we have like different sizes. So it's going to be the 10th margin to all the sides. Yes, that's how NativeWind is working, and that's what we're gonna use now to style our components. And again, open the Tailwind CSS documentation, because we can always reference it to see like what we can do, like the text align, text decoration, style, and so on. Let's see. I'm going to do a git add git commit -m setup NativeWind. Someone is asking how to do responsive font size. First of all, let me check if I can run it on web and if NativeWind is going to work on web as well. I pressed W and this will open my project on web, as you can see here. And as we see, NativeWind works perfectly on web as well. So what we can do, I didn't check it out, but in Tailwind, we can do the following to have responsive sizes. We can specify text let me remember. We can specify here a size of a screen. For example, for medium screens, I'm just trying to remember if it's medium and above or medium and below. I think it's medium and above. So I'm gonna do here text XL on the small devices, or text MD medium on small devices, but on medium devices I'm gonna do text 5-5XL, and I can also change the color. Text blue on small devices, and from medium and up I want text red 500. So let's see. Here we see the text red, but as we are gonna move and make our application smaller, when it becomes medium size, as you can see, the color became blue and the text size became smaller. So as simple as that, we have a responsive font size with NativeWind. It's default, and I haven't tried it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work the same, for example, on that's interesting. There are things like that. I'm wondering if that's because of the MD. Most probably it's because of this one. And if I have it, it kind of works, but if I reload, and most probably it was added by the MD. This might be some bugs that are still being fixed in the version 4, because as I said, version 4, I'm not sure if it's yet stable, version 4 of NativeWind. And I'm pretty sure it's coming from this MD. And also, it might work perfectly fine in production. It might be only a development issue, a development server issue. But if I'm gonna remove this MD from here and MD from here, what? Still the same? Come on. Reload. Yeah, it's still the same. When I reload, it has this issue, but when I hot refresh, like when something changes, it works. So might not actually be from the MD. I will reload and I will force like a refresh like this so that they can see it. And you can also try to run it on an iPad. And on an iPad, I think it's supposed to show like with red because that device is MD, like medium or above. And for medium or above, it's going to apply this style and this style. Okay, that's a little introduction on NativeWind. We're gonna learn more as we create our UI, and that's going to be our next step actually. Let me check here, git status, what do I just showed you the responsiveness. Burke is saying with Expo, simple applications like Hello World takes like 60 megabytes APK size. I don't think that's the case at this moment. I don't have an exact number of megabytes, but it's definitely not 60 megabytes. I think you're working with outdated data from like, I don't know, 5 years ago. Nowadays, it's way better. It probably, I'm not exactly sure, but it's probably around 30 megabytes. But it actually might be even smaller. So we have our application running on web, on iOS. It also works on Android. It's using NativeWind. It has like responsive fonts. And we have Expo Router, we have NativeWind, we have everything ready to go ahead and start actually building the UI, the user interface of our application. And for the user interface, we're gonna start with a home screen that will render a feed like this. I'm gonna leave the Tailwind documentation open because if we need something, we're gonna search it here. We can also check it on the web as well. Icons, yeah, I'm gonna leave it like this. Okay. So before we start working on the feed, I have prepared for you some dummy data that will help us render something on the screen with some JSON data. Go ahead and download this file from the guide. And this should be the file. I don't know if you can download it, or you can just simply, if you see it in raw version, copy the content. I think you can also download it. I don't know why it's opening like this. But if it's not actually downloading it, go ahead, copy the content of this file, and let's go back in our application. Let's go to Assets. And let's create here a folder data where we're gonna store some dummy data like posts.json. Let's paste the array here. And here I added a couple of posts with their ID, image, URL, some caption, the user that created that post with his username and image as well, so that we can start working with some data. Let's go ahead and import the post.json inside our feed screen in source, application, tabs, index. I'm gonna start by import posts from assets, data, posts. And if inside here, we can also go ahead and take post 1 from the array of posts at position 0. And here that's supposed to be one single post object. So if I go ahead and do a console log post 1 and open the terminal where the server is running, we should see an object at the bottom with the caption, with the image, ID 1, and so on. Okay, that's the object, that's the data. Actually, this is the object that we are working with. And our goal is to go ahead and render the post on the screen, the first post on the screen. If we look at this UI, the main content of this post is the actual image, which we want to render full screen like this. Then we have a header with some information about the user and some icons at the bottom. Before I do that, I also want to show you how we can improve a little bit the imports. And instead of doing this dot dot slash to get like relative paths, we can specify aliases inside tsconfig in the compiler option. If we specify the base URL as the current folder using dot, and then using paths here, how do we do that? Let me check. It's paths, yeah. And inside paths object, we can define like some alias or a pattern that we can use. In our case, we're gonna use this sign to specify that we want to import something relative to the root directory. And we can do that by remapping it to dot slash like this. Or no, simply without even slash, simply like this. So whenever we are using this syntax, will remap it to the root directory that we have here in the base URL. And that will basically allow us, instead of navigating a lot back, we're simply going to say from the root directory, go inside assets folder, root assets. And this is way easier import. And if I reload, maybe I'll have to restart the server, and actually it crashed completely. So let me restart. At this moment, I don't think I need the clean. I can remove that one. And if I reload the application or go home, Instagram, let's test if the import is working. Hey, hello Daniel, how are you doing? We see that the data is still here, but the import is way better. And it's also going to help you like when you move things around, not to have to edit like relative paths. Burke is asking about Expo being used in production or enterprise project. Avon Bacon is keeping track of a list of Avon Bacon blog, a list of applications from the top applications on App Store that are using Expo. If we go here on the blog of Expo apps in 2024, you can see a lot of very popular applications that are using Expo in production. Well, first of all, Facebook applications, and I mean Meta applications like Facebook, Instagram, and so on, are using React Native. I don't think they are using Expo, but at least they're using React Native. For Expo, let's see. Come on. I know it takes a bit of time to load. But let me paste this here. Yes, Daniel, you're right. You need to be subscribed to the channel not to miss the future videos. So yeah, guys, if you're not yet subscribed, make sure to press the subscribe button. We're going live every Friday, so you don't want to miss future React Native tutorials. Can you cover authentication and backend for this application? Yes, of course, and we're gonna actually do it today by the end of its stream. How far are we in the stream so far? What's the timings? We are 1 hour in. Okay, we are gonna spend around an hour for the user interface. Then we're gonna cover the backend and some additional features as well. We're gonna have authentication, database, API. We're gonna be able to upload posts, optimize them using Cloudinary, deliver them, like a lot. So hello, Mert from Turkey. How are you doing? Someone is asking about custom native splash screen. We have a tutorial about custom splash screen in the November series. That's a playlist of daily streams that we have done in December. So check out somewhere on day 2 or day 3, we've done that. Okay. So we have some data. We have a post 1. Let's go ahead and start rendering. Oh, here is the Expo application. So Microsoft is using it for the authenticator. Discord is using Expo. The shop, Coinbase, some very huge application. Capital One. Yeah, from food industry, Pizza Hut, Burger King, the sports, shopping, Amazon is using it. My internet, I think, is kind of slow today. Hope everything is good with live stream quality. Viber is using Expo. Okie dokie. Anyway, back to our tutorial. Our goal is to render one post like this. Let's start with the main part of our post with the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this text for a bit. I'm going to remove some of the classes from this view. Yeah, let's remove. And let's simply render the image inside the view. We need to make sure to import image from React Native. And we're gonna have to specify the source of this image, the source as URI. The URI can be taken from post 1, and if we look in the data, the post will have an image underscore URL. So let's use that because this is a publicly accessible remote image, but I have them hosted. So let's simply use post1 dot image URL. Now we're not gonna see anything, but if we give here, we don't see them because we didn't specify the width and the height of the image. Using class name, we specify, for example, W for width, something like 24, and height 24. We are supposed to see something. But we don't. Why? Image URL. Image URL. Is this image? Yes, it's actually correct. Let me try oh no, it's actually working. It just took a lot of time to load it. And that's actually the point of today's tutorial. If we check at this image, like it takes a long time to load the image. Because it's a huge image. It has, if I look in the network, No, it has a lot of data. It's quite heavy. We're gonna optimize it later. For now, let's just work with what we have. So by simply saying some width and height, we already have something. However, the width, we want it to be full width, like to be the whole screen. So we can do W full, and that will take the full width. And instead of specifying the height, I would rather specify an aspect ratio so that we calculate the height based on the width. So there is in Tailwind the aspect ratio square, and that will make it a square based on the width, like equal to the width. However, you can also apply here non-standard aspect ratios by providing here with this syntax a fraction like 3/4 or 4/3 to make it like this, or any kind of like 12/3 or something like that is going to work. Should we go with 4/3? Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Let's keep it like this for now. Okay, so we have an image which is full width and with a specified aspect ratio. Let's go ahead at the top and create here the header of our post. In the header, we're gonna have a view because we have a container, and inside that container, we need two things. We need the avatar and we need the name, the username. For the avatar, that's going to be another image. So we can do image. And again, we need to specify the source, which is going to be URI post1 dot. We have user.avatar URL. Let me double check that in the assets data posts. We have user and we have, it's not avatar URL because avatar URL is going to be the next step. Now we need image URL. So let's call image URL. And again, we don't see it, but if using class name, we're gonna say with 24, and maybe in this case, I want aspect ratio square to have the same width and height, we're gonna have the image there. Oh, that's a very old image. I used some old dummy data when Among Us was still relevant. But yeah, it does the job, just to have it as a dummy image. So what else we can do here? We can specify that we want corners rounded. So you can choose from medium rounded corners to full rounded corners, which makes it a circle, exactly what we need. And maybe width 24 is too much, so let's select something less. For example, width 16, maybe even less, width 12. And if you're asking, how do I get IntelliSense? How do I get suggestions for these styles? That's super valuable, and I'd recommend you to install. That's the Tailwind extension in VS Code. Tailwind, if you search it, come on. There is Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Install and enable this library, and it will add this kind of IntelliSense and auto suggestion. For example, just by writing V, and then this one is going to show you all possible options related to width. Because as you can see, we don't have all the values because we don't have a 13th, and that's by design. So what did we have here? 12, maybe 12. Another thing that the header will have using the class name is some padding, like padding 3. Or maybe padding 2, to add some spacing around it. Perfect. After the image, we want to render the username of a person using a text. Let's go ahead and render it as post1.user.username. And now it's going to render below the image. to put them in the same row. Remember, we usually do that using justify flex direction row in styles. In Tailwind and NativeWind here, we have that as flex row, and that applies flex direction row. Puts them in the same row. To align them, we can do items center, and that will put them in the same horizontal line. We can also do justify center to put them in the center, or justify between to put the space between, and all the other justify as well. I don't need any justify here. To add some spacings between the image and the name, the best way nowadays is to use a gap. It's available in React Native, so we can simply do gap instead of adding margin or padding to the components here. And lastly, let's style a bit the text of the username. Let's make it a little bit bold. And we can do that by defining font and here semi-bold. That will make it semi-bold. And you can do a lot of other stuff like text XS to make it smaller, or 2XL and so on, like any size that you can see here. And also colors. For me, that's good enough. I'm gonna leave it like this. And now our header is ready. The last step in our UI is going to be footer. And in the footer, we have some icons. Let's go ahead and render them below the image inside a view. The icons that we're gonna have, let's not waste a lot of time, and let's take them from what I've prepared for you. I'm gonna find that where? I don't even know. Give me just 1 second. And I'm gonna put it in the guide so that you can copy paste. These are just icons, and we're gonna spend a bit of time to find them. These are the icons. These are the 4 icons that we need. Let's just put them right after the image, like this, and also make sure to import and design Ionicons and Feather from Expo vector icons. What did I say? Ionicons, Feather, and what else? And design. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this code in the guide so that you can also copy paste it. Let's do it here. Icons. Okay. So now if you refresh the guide, you're gonna see the icons as well. And as you can see, we are simply rendering the icons. The only thing is that for the last icon, we added here ML auto, which stands for margin left auto, and that makes the icon move to the right, because without it, it's going to be all together here on the left. So by ML auto, we put margin left auto and we put it to that side. I think what else we need here is some padding to the whole container, like padding 2 as well as we have in the header. And yeah, now that looks much better. Maybe 3. Yeah, 3 probably is also better. And we can do 3 on the header as well. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we have both the header and the footer of our component. If we, I'm not sure if we want that, but maybe on the whole container, we can add background color white to make the background white, to make the background color of a post white like this. Yeah, I think that's going to be better. And just by having like some spacing between two posts is going to look very nice. Okay guys, so now this is one post in our list. This is the code for the user interface of our post. It looks nice, it's a starting point, it's not complete, but it's enough for us to get started and work and continue implementing the functionalities of this. Before I do that, what I usually like to do is, now as you can see, we are working inside the feed screen. This, however, represents the code for one post. The thing is that in our application, we would love to reuse the same code that we have here in multiple places, anywhere we want to render a post. For example, even on the home screen, we're going to render it multiple times, like in a list, or on search page, we're also going to render some kind of a post like this. So that's why we need to create a custom component that will handle all the logic of rendering one single post. And then by reusing that custom component, we can easily reuse functionalities and UI components. To do that, let's go in the components folder and create a new file. Let's call it post list item.tsx. A custom component, we need to export it first to be able to use it later. And a custom component is a simple function. A simple function that returns something. And also it needs a name. Let's call it post list item. What it will return is the thing that we want to render. If we go back to our app tabs index, everything that we have in this return statement is actually the code for our post list item. So let me cut everything from here and move it to the post list item instead of this return statement. We need to make sure to import from React Native like the view from React Native, the image, text, and also from the icons as well. So basically you could just copy paste everything from here and rename the file like this. For a second, let's just import that data as well in the post list item and the way we take the first post here, because we are using here post 1. Now back in our index.tsx file in the feed screen, let's go back and return something here. What we want to return, let's start with a view that will render a post list item imported from source components post list item. And just like that, we see it on the screen, but we can go ahead and duplicate it multiple times to render it like this multiple times without having to duplicate the actual code, only the reference. So that's how we create and how we can use custom components in React Native. But the thing is that we would like to send different data to this post list item, the first one and the second one. How can we do that? We do that by passing here props, and we pass them by first specifying the name here. So let's call the property post, and then sending some data here. For the first item, we're going to send here the post1, where we can actually go ahead and reference the array at position 0, and without needing this one at all. And in the second instance, we're going to send here post at position 1 to the same property on our custom component. This is how we send data down to a component. Let's go to the actual component and see how we can receive this data. Well, we will receive it here through the props parameter on our function component. There will be, I will call it the same like post1 for a second, but the post1 is going to be accessible in the props at dot with the same name as we used here. So we used here post, like this. We're not going to need any longer to import and even use dummy data in the post list item, because the post list item is going to be responsible on rendering the data, and it's going to receive the data that it should render. And just like that, we see two posts from two different users, or with two different images. Perfect. Now what I will do is I will actually rename post1 to actual simply post, and where we reference here in the code from post1 to post like this. And whenever we have, in order to simplify this line of code, we can right away destructure the post property from our object here. So I don't need this line. I simply destructure it by referencing it by name, which is post, and we take it out of that object. And if I reload, our application still works as we expect. There is a TypeScript error, but we're going to cover that a bit later. For now, let's just continue. And yeah, now we can simply send here different data, and it will render here as a different post. It's loading the image. It's a bit slow. We're going to optimize that in a second. That's too long. Post free. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. The next step I want to show you is, instead of manually accessing like post at position 2, post at position 3, what I want to do is I want to render a list of post list items for every single post in our data array. So basically, I want to loop through this array and for every data, render an item here and make the whole list scrollable. To do that, we have a flat list component in React Native. So let's import it. And finally, the image loaded. And instead of rendering the view here, I'm actually going to comment this return out. And I'm going to start from scratch by simply returning a flat list. A flat list is the component used to render lists. It needs two important properties. It needs data, which should be an array of things that we want to render. In our case, we want to render the posts data. And it also needs a render item function that specifies how do we want to render every single item in that array. So for every single item in the array, we want to render this post list item. So we define the function that will render the post list item. Just like that, we have a scrollable list of posts. But all of them are rendering the third post here because we are accessing it directly. What we want to do is we want the render item when calling this when the flat list is calling the render item function for every single post in this array, it's actually going to send it to us as the item that is being rendered. And we can take this item and send it as the post here. And now all our posts are going to be different. First one, second one, third one, and fourth one, which has not been loaded yet. All of them represents one data item in the array. And just like that, we have our feed complete with a list of items. In terms of styling, I will also add here the style for the content container style, and I will simply add a gap 5 to have some spacing between the posts here. Maybe gap 10, even more. Yeah, I think that looks good. Flat list has two required properties, but you can adjust it. You can customize a lot of things. One of the things that I want to do is remove or hide the scroll indicator. So I can do that using show vertical scroll indicator false. And if I scroll now, I don't have the scroll indicator. Looks much better. Okay, perfect. So now I don't even need this return statement. I can remove it because we just have a flat list. I'll also remove some of the unused components from our feed screen. And in the post list item, everything is good so far. Perfect. So that's our user interface for the feed screen. Git commit feed screen. During this part, we have learned how to build user interfaces and how to style them using NativeWind and Tailwind CSS classes. We learned how to export different parts of our UI into separate components. In our case, we created a custom post list item component. We learned how to send data from a parent component, post list item, down to the child component through properties. In this case, we are sending the data about the post that we want to render. We learned how to receive this data here and use it. And we also learned about flat list and how to use it to render lists of data. Nice, perfect. We have good progress, and we still have a lot of things to implement. Let me double check if we have everything. Post UI, flat list, post list, item, custom component. Yep, we have. Empire, hello. Thank you very much for joining us live today. How can we make, Burke is asking, how can we make images responsive for every screen size? I mean, without vfull. What we can do for responsiveness here is let's check our application on the web. Because on the web, we can easily scale up and down. If I'm gonna reload on the web, we have a post full width. Probably that's not what we actually want. And the first step is to add the maximum width that we want a component to expand to. And the component that we want to limit how wide it can be is the post list item, or it can actually be the flat list itself. So in the flat list, we can say, we can give here a class name and say max width and pick here a number like, I don't know, 48. That's too small, right? That's too small. Max width. What's a bit higher? 96. Even 96 is small. Maybe choosing something from medium. Medium even here didn't work well. Maybe large. max width large. Yeah, I think max width large is something that we want. So we told the flat list, by default it's going to take full width, this flat list, but it's not going to get larger than this max width large, which is going to be 512 pixels, as you can see here. And what I also can do is I can do items center. What's that going to do? I don't think it's what I was expecting. If I do background, flat list, maybe margin horizontal auto, self-center. If I do self-center, it's going to put it in the center, but it's going to also shrink it. So what I need to do is self-center. Maybe not here. Yeah, it depends on where we apply it. Maybe I need to adjust the content container style by saying here max width 512, and in this instance on the item I can do item center. Flex 1 and item center. Oh, I'm blanking on something. Max width 100%. Items center. Yes, with 100%, we'll make sure that it expands as much as possible, but it's not going to get more than the maximum width. And it's going to be centered on the web. And I don't need the flex because flex is, yeah. Okay, now it works here and it works here as well. So now our flat list is responsive. Responsive feed. Add minimum width. I don't think I need minimum width. I need the width of the flat list to be on small screens to be full width. Because if I add minimum width, it's going to look weird if the device has an even smaller screen size than the minimum width. You have to place the flat list in a view and do the styling there. I could do that, but I know that the flat list has two views behind the scenes. It has the view that we can, like the whole flat list that we can style here, and it has this view that is wrapping around the content. So if I do here background slate 300 and here background color red, you should see that this one is the whole flat list, but on the background red is only around the content. So that's why I leveraged these two properties. The class name, which is applying the style property, and the content container style, which is applying it here. And maybe you're thinking, why didn't we use also NativeWind classes for the content container style? Well, we didn't do that because as it is right now, we cannot pass here like a string to the content container style. We have added like a plugin. I think the Babel plugin will automatically take the class name, will parse these styles, and they will apply it to the style. And for the style, that works. That's why we can use it here. But for additional things, we need to adjust it. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw that in NativeWind, that we can do that, but we need just to create like a styleable component. Where? I don't remember exactly where. Custom components. Anyway, you can do that. Style, props, text style. Basically, you can create like a style flat list that you can specify all the properties of a flat list that can expect like a style object, such as the style, such as content container style, and so on. I think that was the example that I was looking was for the SVG. Yeah, I think it's here, styled. Styling multiple properties. As you can see, class name and then inner style. So I can use here a const styled flat list. Let me just check it out. Equal to styled. Which is imported from NativeWind. We're gonna import styled, not from NativeWind. Where? Should be from here, but for some reason, maybe it's NativeWind. I need to check before. I'm gonna waste a bit of time here, so probably that's not a very smart thing to do right now. Multiple. Yeah, exact like flat list. Content container style, class names. Remap props. Oh, you just need to do that once. Anyway, check out this documentation to see how we can add NativeWind to the components that have multiple style properties. And one of them is the flat list that has also this content container style. I'm gonna keep it like this because it works. I'm going to change something here. Center. I will remove these ones. And everything is working fine. Let's go ahead and do git status. What's changed? I think we can safely do git. Don't do git stash. Git stash will remove everything that you have not committed and pushed. The flat list in a view and then style that right. I explained that already, like how I did it with the class name and the content container style. Okay, perfect. So how are we doing on time? We are halfway there. And we are done with the home screen and the feed. The next screen that I want us to build is the new post page. On the new post, it's not very complicated. We're going to allow the user to pick an image from his library. We're going to allow him to write a caption, and we're going to have a custom button here. So let's go ahead and start working on that screen because I can't wait to get into the backend things. So what I'm going to do is in the application tabs, new, I'm going to open this file up and let's go ahead and reload the application and open the create a post page. As I said, we are going to start with rendering a view for our page. We're going to have at the top the image picker. Then we're going to have a what? Come on. A text input for the caption. And later we're going to have a button. Let's go ahead and import the view because it doesn't like that we render, but we didn't import it. For the image, let's start by simply rendering the image. We know how to render an image like this, image, and we need to give it a source, and we need to import the image from React Native. The URI of this image, we can start by giving this image is going to come from the user's device when he picks an image from his library. For now, let's just simply render a remote image, the URL of which we can find in the posts.json, for example. I think that the user avatar image URL is going to be a smaller image. Or anyway, I can take this one because it's a bit more beautiful. So let's copy this URL and let's come back to the new.tsx screen to render this image here. But we also need to do class name here for with. What with? With 24 and aspect ratio, or no, aspect dash, and here we need 4/3. It doesn't like some changes there, but after reloading it works. Okay, maybe 24 is not enough. Maybe with MD, no, that's a lot. With SM, with 96. Okay. No, that's too much. With 52. Okay, that's better. We have aspect ratio. Maybe I wanted 3/4 to make it on this screen. As you can see in the UI, we have it vertical. I don't know, I saw that on Instagram. I'm gonna keep it the same here. And I will also go ahead on the parent component. Let's give it here a class name. Let's first of all add some padding using p3 to add padding on all the sides. And let's try to align items in the center of the screen. Items center. That will put the items in the center. That's good. And on the image, I'll make the corners round using the class rounded large. That's good. You can also add shadow, for example, shadow MD. That is supposed to add some shadow there. Is the shadow the problem? Where is my image? It's not loaded, I think. It's not loaded, but if I add background, I don't know, slate like this, yes, we see that it's something there, but it's not loaded. So we're gonna wait for a second. What's up with the shadow on the image? I think on the image there is a bug, because on anything else it works perfect, but on the image there is something there is going on. But anyway, we have an image there, perfect, we can move on. The next step, I think we have there under the image a button called change, which will allow us to open the image library to select a different image. So that's going to be a simple text component that will say change, and with some classes we can adjust how we want to show it. First of all, I want the color to change the color. So let's do text blue, and here 500. Let's do a font semi-bold. That error, I think, is coming from NativeWind. And maybe I can do also some margin 5 to add it at the top. Yeah, perfect. And later on, we're going to be able to add an on-press event that will launch the camera, the image picker. What's there? Scroll view child, let me read the error because I was ignoring it. Scroll view child layout align items must be applied through the content container style prop. I'm doing something wrong in the index here. Align items here, it doesn't like that. So indeed, maybe I should. What if I don't do it on the class name, but I do it here as self, align self, center. Let me check on the web if it's still working. Yes, it works. And now hopefully it's not gonna raise that error. I was simply ignoring it, but it was telling me like, hey, that's not how you do it. Okay, so we have a change. Now let's go to the text input for the caption. That text input will go right after the image where we can write something. To render a text input, that's exactly the component that we need to import from React Native, text input, and we can render it here, text input. We can give it a placeholder that will say, I don't know, what's on. We have it here, and with some classes we can adjust how we render it. For example, just to see what's going on there, I'm gonna add background white, and we see that the background white, maybe background red so that you can see it as well, 500. What's going on? Yeah, we see that it takes only the amount of space as this placeholder takes. If I add here with full, it's supposed to take the full width, like this. I'll also add here maybe some padding, like 3. What? Don't like this. And yeah, that's good. Now I will simply remove the background color. And now I can go ahead and write something here, and that's our text input. The thing is that now we have a text input, we can write things here, but there is no way to access what is the user writing. In order to be able to access that data, we need to keep track of that in a state variable. That's why we use state. That's one reason or one use case where we use a state variable. Let's import useState from React, and let's define the state for our caption. Set caption. We define it using the useState hook imported from React, and when we call this useState hook, we can specify the default value that we want to initialize the caption state with. Now, this caption variable is going to store the value of our state, of our caption state. We can take this value and send it to the value of the text input like this. Now it's going to work because if I write here something, it's going to appear in the text input. But if I'm going to try to change it, it will always come back to this string. Because not only should we send the value to the text input, we also have to listen to updates from the text input and update our state by calling this set caption. To do that, we're going to send here to the text input the onChangeText, which is a callback function with new value. And with this new value, we can set the caption and update with the new value that the user is typing. Now, if I'm going to start typing, it works, it updates the caption value, and we have access to it for later to be able to submit it to our server, to our database. Okay, that's good. That's our text input. Kojo is asking, I'm curious to know how the share, post, and follow functionalities is implemented. Sharing a post, you mean like sharing it on the feed? We are gonna implement this today, but the follow, we're not gonna manage to do that. One second. And lastly, what do we need here at the bottom? Here we need a button. A button in React Native, we have a button component, but that's a very simple component that we cannot adjust the styles of. However, there is a more general pressable component that allows us to handle press events on different components. Let's go ahead and render the pressable for our button. And inside the pressable, render a text for the text of a button. Let's call it share post or something like that. How did we call it? Share. For the pressable, let's give it a class name and say background color blue 500. Why is it not updating? Yes, it's updating. Let's what do we want to do with that button? I want to make it full width. So let's do the full. Let's add some padding, like 10. Why you're not reloading instantly? Oh, 10 is too much. 10 I wanted pixels, but 10 there is more than pixels. Let's align them in the center, I mean the text, item center. That's good. And let's make the corner let's make it rounded. Rounded MD. That looks good. Maybe padding 4 is too much, padding 3. Yeah, probably that's better. Now for the text itself, let's do text white and semi-bold using font semi-bold. Okay, I like that. And if this is going to be our reusable button, maybe we can put it inside another view that will represent the footer of this component. And I want this footer to be aligned at the bottom of the screen using margin top auto. If we add margin top auto, it's going to try to move it all the way to the bottom. But because the parent component view is not expanding on the full screen, it doesn't work. And we need to make sure that the parent component expands on the full screen using flex 1. Now, what's going on? Yes, now it works. But this view as well should do the full as well. Okay, perfect. Now that's good. So we have a button, we have a text input, we have the image. Let me go ahead and do a git add, git commit -m, create post UI. Because the next step I want to do is whenever I press on the change, I want to open the image picker so that the user can select an image from his library. For that, I'm going to use the image picker library, the Expo image picker. You can open the documentation here. And this allows us to open the native UI so that the user can select an image and then we get access to it in our application. It works both on iOS and Android. And to install it, we need to run npx expo install Expo image picker. Let's go ahead and do that in our terminal. And let's go ahead and see how we can. We need to configure in the app.json. In the app.json, under the plugins, we need to add this plugin. So pay attention at what I'm selecting here. The array that has two fields, the Expo image picker and the object configuration. Let's move to our app.json. Under the plugins, let's move Expo Router from a new row. Let's add here a comma and paste the configuration for Expo image picker. Let's go back and see how we can use it. First things first, we need to import everything as image picker in our component. And our component is the create post screen. Let's import this one at the top. And we need a state variable where we're going to store the URL of the image that we selected. And we need a function that will launch the image library, the image picker. Let's copy it, let's put it here. And this function is called pick image. That is launching the image picker with these options. It's selecting all media types. Maybe we can do dot images to only select images. It allows editing. It also forces an aspect ratio to crop it, and it specifies quality 1. After we receive a result, after the user either cancels or selects a response, we're going to get the result and we're going to check if the user didn't cancel. That means there is some assets, so we are going to update it in state. Let's call this pick image when we press on the change button. change, let's call here, instead of this, we're gonna simply send to the onPress the pick image function. Now, if I go here and also open the terminal to see the logs, if I press change, and if I don't do anything but close this one, we see that cancelled is true in the result. But the thing is that we have access to the image picker. And if I select one of these images and then I crop it, for example, or change it or something like that, then create choose, in the logs, we see that we have assets with an array of images that we just selected. And the thing is that we have a URI, which is the local URL of the image that we just selected. And what we do with this URI, we set it in state as the image. And if we use this image in this rendered image component, for the URI, I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to simply render the image, and let's put it in the same line. It's going to be a bit easier to see. We're going to see that now it has an image. Maybe after I reload and I just go there, it's not going to be there. It might also raise an error because we are trying to render an image without a URL. But after clicking change and selecting something, it's going to appear here. If I change it to this waterfall, we see the waterfall here. Perfect. Another thing that I can do is I can add a use effect that will be called with empty dependency array, which means that it will be called when the create post is rendered. And I will check if there is no image. If there is no image, go ahead and launch the image picker, because when we go to this screen, the first step I want to do is to select an image that I want to share. And I think I need to put the image here as a dependency. Now, if I simply go to this screen, right away, it goes ahead and opens the image picker. I can select it, and now we see it here rendered. Then I can press share, and it's going to first upload the image to Cloudinary and then save the data in the database. That's coming just in a couple of minutes. Because right now we are done with create post page, right? Let me see. I think so. I don't need the console log anymore. Set image. What does it say? It doesn't know that the image can be a string. So optionally, if you want to be TypeScript correct, you can say that this state should be a string or it should be null. Okay, now you don't have that red error here. However, you have it here, saying that you are trying to render an image when the source cannot be null. I think as you saw, it still works. It's not very correct, but it still works. If you want to make it more correct, you can check, for example, if there is an image, render the image. Otherwise, render a simple view. And for this view, I'm going to give the same class name so that we render the same kind of container. Now, if there is no image, we are simply rendering this empty container. If there is an image, after we select it from the store, from the picker, only then is going to render this selected image. And this one is a bit more correct. Okay, let me go ahead and do git add git commit image picker. Perfect. And that was our image picker. The next step would be the update profile screen, right? Update profile screen. Here, what do we have? We again have some image picker for the profile image, some inputs, and some buttons. How we want time? I think we are supposed to manage in time with everything that I have planned. So let's go ahead and implement the last page on our screen that will allow the user to manage and update his profile by uploading an avatar, by changing his username, and so on. That screen is in our application, tabs, profile. I'm gonna start by rendering a view at the top, and we're gonna have here some comments first. We're gonna have avatar image picker. We need to import the view from React Native. After the avatar image picker, we're gonna have a form with text fields to update his information, and then some buttons. We're gonna reuse a lot of the things that we have here on the create post page, right? Let's start with the avatar image picker. Let's open the new profile and do the same things, because on the profile page we still have to pick the image. I'm thinking maybe we should maybe we can replace it like with a custom component, like a image picker component, but I'm going to duplicate some code for now. So from the new page, I want to move the functionality and the UI for picking an image to the profile as well, so that we can select an avatar on profile page. For that, we need the image picker in the profile. We're going to need the image state in profile at the top here inside the profile screen. We're gonna need to import the use state from, the use state from React. We're gonna need the pick image function. This one is launching the image picker. And for the avatar, I think I can safely do aspect 1/1. We are setting the image, and let's render it on the UI. We're gonna render it similar to this one. Let's go ahead and render it here. If there is an image, let's render the image component that should be imported from React Native. And also, what else? Yeah. If there is an image, render the image. If not, render a simple empty component. So let's go here. Yes, it's working. Maybe I will have not rounded LG, but rounded full to make it fully round. And I need to apply it to both at the top and at the bottom. And the aspect here is going to be square to make it same width and height. Again, for both of them, for the image and for this one. And let's also do align self or self-center. If I do it at the bottom as well, yes, it works. Because I only will have this item on the center, that's why I didn't want to center everything in the view. In the view that represents our page, I'll just add some padding using P3. Nice. After this one, let's bring the change button as well, so that we can maybe also add self-center. And if I press change, I can select an avatar, I can do choose, and it's going to be rendered in the image component here. So selecting an avatar, for now, it works. Let's move on to the form. The form is kind of a bit different because we have like the inputs and we have some labels. For now, the only thing that I need is a text input imported from React Native that will store the username, the value of a username. So username set username equal use state, and is going to be initialized with empty string. Now let's give this username to the text input. Let's start with placeholder username. Let's give here the value username and the set or on change text. Let's give here the set username. This way we have a username field, we can write here and it works. I'll also give some class name here. I want it to have a border, so just by sending border and border gray 300 or maybe 500. Okay, it has a border, maybe 500 is too much. And let's add the padding to have some spacing inside it. It needs some rounded MD. And just like that, we have the input. Maybe padding 3 is going to look better. Yep. Let's try a shadow small on the input. I don't really like the shadow here. Let's remove it. Okay. Here I also have a label, so I might add it. And the idea was to create a custom component for it. We're gonna see if we need to reuse the same input multiple times. We are gonna extract it to a custom component. And here, let's give it a class name margin bottom 2 to have some spacing between the label and margin bottom 2. And let's give it text gray 800. $700. Come on. And font semi-bold. Maybe even lower, like 500 and a semi-bold. Yeah, I think that works. Username, semi-bold, perfect. So now we have a form, we can write the username so that the user can update his data, which we're gonna actually need when we implement the backend in a second. And lastly, we need a button here. We have created a button on the previous screen in the new, and instead of copy pasting this button there, what I would like to do is I would like to create a reusable button component and be able to reuse it here as well and in other parts of my application. For that, in the component, let's create a new file, button.tsx. Let's export default function button, and this function is going to render what we currently have in the new.tsx as the pressable. I'm gonna copy the pressable from here inside our button. Make sure to import pressable from React Native here, and the text, come on, text, also from React Native. And now we can go back to the new file and render the button together with the old one, like button. But when you import it, make sure to import it from the source components button, not from React Native and not from anywhere else, like from your components folder. Now, if I go to this page, I'm supposed to see two buttons, right? It cannot be used as a component. Why? Because I forgot to return here. That's true. We need to return this JSX. Now I see two buttons, share and share. One coming from here and another one from the new. The thing is that this button, to be reusable, some of the things should be passed through the properties. Things like the text that we want to render here is going to be passed through the properties as text or title. Let's call it title. Let's take this title and render it in the text. Now it disappeared because from the new page we didn't send the title through the properties, and if I do here share post, we're gonna see it in the button like this. Another thing that we want to send, at least is going to be the onPress event that is going to be attached to the pressable to be able to handle press events. And yeah, that's our reusable button. I'll also show you how we can define the types for our button. Props is equal to, what props do we have? We have a title, which is of type string. And we have an onPress, which is a type, which should be a function that returns nothing, void. We take these button props and we save it. These props objects should be of type button props. Hey Francesco, thank you very much for the donation. Francesco is saying nice shirt. Thank you, Vadim. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. How are you doing? You are one of the students from the React Native Mastery. How is the progress going? And if you are new to this channel, I'm working currently on a new course called React Native Mastery. You can learn more about it going to notjust.dev/React Native Mastery. And this is going to be a mega course with 7 projects that will teach you everything about building applications with React Native, Expo, Expo Router, TypeScript, Stack Random, a lot of libraries that are being used in production nowadays. So this is a heavy on projects. You're going to build 7 projects that you can add to your portfolio. We have the first 3 modules ready, and we already enrolled 50 students as early access, and Francesco is one of them. Now I'm working on the last ones, and the course is going to be launched by the end of the year. So if you're interested, make sure to click join the waitlist, and I'm gonna make sure to let you know when we have updates there. Burke is asking, can you consider regional pricing in the course? Most probably we're gonna have the regional pricing for the course, but I cannot promise at the moment. can you compile iOS in Windows with Expo? You cannot compile it locally because you need Xcode, so you cannot install Xcode on Windows. However, you can use Expo application services or EAS, and you can build it in cloud. So you can develop your projects on Windows, and you can use EAS to build it for iOS in cloud and install it on any device or deliver it to the store. Anyway, our button here is done. Maybe the one press event should be optional, so I'm gonna add a question mark here. And now everything works here, perfect. And I can reuse the same button in the profile page, or maybe before that I will remove what I previously had in the new, not to have two buttons. Share. And on the profile page, I can add here the same button component that we just created. First with a title, update profile, and second button with a title, sign out. Sign out. If I go to profile, they're displayed close together there, so I'm gonna put them in a view that will represent our footer. And the footer will first of all have some, in class name, will have a gap of 3 to have some spacing, and a margin top auto. It's not moving it to the bottom because the parent component should have a flex 1 to take the full available screen. Yes. And maybe gap 3 is too much, so gap 2 is good enough. So now we have our profile page, the UI for profile page as well, where we will be able to edit the username, add a profile picture, update the profile, and sign out. That's good. Let's go ahead and do a git status, git add, git commit -m, profile page, and here we are. Okay, so we are doing a lot of progress. From the UI perspective, we are more or less done with the most important parts of a social media application that would allow users to sign up, create an account, manage their account, share a post, and see the list of posts. And from the functionality wise, we're gonna have everything implemented by the end of the tutorial. So make sure to stick till the end. If you need a break, pause the video, take a coffee, and come back, and let's continue building it. Because the most exciting parts that I've prepared for you are coming now. So, as I said, the UI is finished. Let's move on to managing the backend, managing the images, the media files. And what I want to go into right now is the Cloudinary part. Cloudinary is the problem that I'm going to try to solve with Cloudinary is slow loading images. If I reload the application, take a look at how slow are these images loading. These are actually already cached, so I think if it's a new one, if we're opening the application again, like it's going to be even slower. And if you're on a slow internet connection, it's going to be terrible. Not only the application feels slow when you're loading unoptimized images, but also you're sending a lot of data over the wire. And if you go to your server and press J to open the debugger, this should open the DevTools in Chrome. We can go to the network tab, we can reload our application, and we're gonna see the images that we are loading. We see that actually they are not quite bad. I think I actually optimized them already because they are a couple of kilobytes. But if you allow users to to pick images from their gallery and upload them, these images will be 10 megabytes large. So if all the posts in your feed will be 10 megabytes, imagine how much data you're going to send and make your users download. And the thing is that in some cases, you don't need like full quality images. Let's say the avatar here of a user is displayed in such a small container of, I don't know, 50 pixels over 50 pixels, that would be very unoptimal to load a full HD image in such a small space. To make it optimized and fast, we need to load images of the right size in different parts of our application. For that, we need to, in a way, resize the images on the fly or in the background. We don't want to resize them once and save them once, because maybe later or in different parts of applications, we render the same image with different sizes. So we need to store the original image, and then when the user requests it, we need to resize it on the fly. That's why we're gonna use Cloudinary today, and that's how it's going to help us. It's going to optimize our images. You can click the link here and sign up for a free account. And what Cloudinary is going to do is exactly that. And not only that, like this is only just a small part of it, the performance optimization. It comes with a lot of other features like content-aware cropping. So when we are cropping an image, we can focus on the subjects, on the people faces, and so on. Where is it? On the platform, if I go how to pronounce it? Programmable media, I guess so. We can have like generative fill to expand images. We can have object removal automatically by a simple request. We can have a generative replace to replace stuff with AI. Zoom in and out, product gallery. We can add filters by simply adding a parameter to the URL of the image that we are requesting. So take a look here, like if I copy this URL in the browser, will it open? Let's see. Here is the image with grayscale because in the URL it has grayscale. If I'm gonna change that grayscale to simply E_tint, Cloudinary behind the scenes is going to apply this and will deliver me the final version of this image. And you saw how fast it is. On the optimize and deliver, we're gonna use a lot of automatic cropping, and it also works for both images and videos. But instead of telling a lot of things, let me actually show you, and let's actually start using it. To actually see Cloudinary in action, we don't even have to have an account yet. So we can use the documentation for React Native. Go ahead in the guide, press this link. You'll also find it in the description of the video. And here is the documentation for the React Native SDK. If we scroll down past the quick example shows how we can use it. But if we scroll down until get started with React Native, let's go ahead and start by installing Cloudinary in our Expo project. Copy this command, let's go here, and let's start by installing Cloudinary React Native. Let's go back. The next step is to configure Cloudinary. You can specify the configuration parameters that are used to create the delivery URLs, either using Cloudinary instance or for every single request. To use the Cloudinary instance, we're gonna import Cloudinary from Cloudinary URL gen, but first let's wait for the npm command to finish. How is the quality of a stream? Because I feel that my internet is super slow today. Please do multiple videos and photos for a post. If we have time at the end, I'm going to try to show you, but we still have to cover the image optimization with Cloudinary and then the backend authentication database and so on. So Cloudinary has been installed. Let's go in the component that renders one post, because that is a component that is heavy on media, like it renders images. Components, post list item. Here, let's go ahead and from the documentation, import Cloudinary. Now, let's go ahead and define the Cloudinary instance like this. Here, we're specifying the name of our basically environment. We're gonna use demo for now. That's why I told you, like, so far we don't need to do anything else. We can use a demo, see it in action, and later we're gonna be able to change it. Now, using CLD like this Cloudinary, we can get the image. So let's copy this my image, just see it in action inside our post list item. Let's take it here. Let's see what it's doing next. And next, it's using the advanced image component imported from Cloudinary React Native. So, advanced image from Cloudinary React Native, which is a similar image component, but it knows how to render these Cloudinary images. Now, let's go ahead where we render this image. Let's say content. And besides the image that we currently render, on top of it, let's render here the advanced image that expects the CLD image, Cloudinary image, and the Cloudinary image is the one that we just created here. And I don't think it's gonna work because it also needs a class name or styles. And just like that, we have the Cloudinary image here. And we can go ahead and actually remove the old image because we are slowly moving towards optimized images with Cloudinary. So as simple as that, we are now rendering images from Cloudinary. But that's not everything, because right now we are still loading images in full size, unoptimized, without any transformation. If we scroll down a bit, we can get to what part? 1 second. Let's scroll until we get to the transformations. This is the fun part, because the transformations is where we can apply different changes that we want to happen to that image. Changes such as resizing, applying different filters, cropping, smart cropping, and so on. So in order to learn more about that, let's go under the React Native image transformations. Here you can read more about that, but I'm gonna go right away and copy these imports from here. There are 4 imports. Let's copy them here. And they will allow us to apply these transformations on my image. The first one is resize, the second one is rounding the corners. Let's copy this one and paste it after we create our image. And if I reload, I'm supposed to see a cropped version of our image. Not sure why I don't see the radius. Maybe because the way I render it. If I check on the web, by radius, let's do 100. Yes, 100, it works. So just like that, you see that we have resized the image, and now we are loading a very small image, like 150 by 150, and we are also using this .gravity property, which specify how do we want to crop this image to 150 to 150, and we're saying like, hey, focus on the face. And in a second, if we're gonna load a different image with a face, let me check if they have the same data. For example, samples people, boy and hoodie. If I use that name here, will it work? Yes. Look, if I don't resize it, if I comment this out, this is not actually a very good example. Let me check another one. Woman on a football field, or even bike. There is one with a bike. Samples / bike. If I use samples / bike image, that is going to be a picture with a person and a bike. However, if I resize it to a smaller width and say that, hey, focus on the face, then we're gonna focus on the person face. This way we can create avatars based on any kind of image, because without this gravity, it's going to, where is it? Like this. It's going to simply crop that image. Not crop, but simply reduce the size. And I'm pretty sure you can also adjust like how far or how focused you want to be on that face. Using focus face. Let me check. Yeah. Okay, perfect. What do I want to do? Well, I have a couple of things here. I have my image, which I also have, no. Now that we have an idea of how to work with Cloudinary, let's go ahead and create an account and start using our environment instead of using the demo environment. For that, we're gonna go back into the documentation, click on the first link of Cloudinary, and sign up for free. You can sign up with email, or with Google, or with GitHub. Let's continue. Come on. Oh, my internet, come on. Let me try to close some of the stuff down. While this is creating the account, I'm gonna go back to do some coding. What I want to do is I want to extract the configuration of our Cloudinary to a separate file, because I'm gonna need this Cloudinary configuration in multiple parts of my application. So let's go to our folders. Under the source, I'll create a folder called lib for our libraries, and this is going to be called cloudinary.ts. In this file, I'm going to move the part that creates the Cloudinary configuration. And I'm going to export const cld like this. Let's make sure to also import Cloudinary from Cloudinary URL gen. And on our post list item, instead of creating this one, I'm going to import it from the library. And I can do it like this. Yeah. Maybe I can do it even source library. Now it still works, but I'm gonna have the configuration in a separate file, and I'm gonna be able to reuse it in different parts of application. Okay, so now we are, my internet loaded the page. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's go with system. And here in the what's your main interest, let's choose coding with APIs and SDKs. Let's start. And right away, Cloudinary is going to set up our environment. And the environment, I already see it here under the cloud name. This is the cloud name. Or I think we should also see it somewhere in the dashboard. I see it here at the top as well. But in the dashboard, under product environment, we see cloud name. Let's copy it and let's put it in the configuration instead of a demo. Now we are working with our own environment, and later we're gonna upload pictures there and use them from there. By default, Cloudinary, if we open the media library here, by default, Cloudinary is going to have some samples so that we can play with them. And that's why if I simply reload, we still have these images because they are already in our media library as sample images. Yeah. And now if I'm gonna go to the components post list item, actually to the assets data post JSON, you see that I have, besides the URL, besides the unoptimized URLs, I also added the key to the Cloudinary images that we can try to use for our posts and for our users as avatar URL and here as image. So let's try to use this properties image in our post list item to load the image itself. So instead of hard coding here the bike image, I'm gonna load the post.image. If I save, I don't want to round the corners for the image itself, so I'm gonna remove that one. I don't want to, I want to crop it because I want to optimize the size of the image, but I don't want to focus on anything. I want to crop and keep the original kind of size. So I'm gonna remove that one as well and only change the width to 500 to maybe 500. And actually you can take the width of the screen using dimensions. So const use dimensions, use, how is it called? Use window dimensions. This will give you the width of the screen. If I do here console log width, you're gonna see that the width of the screen in this current case is 393. So instead of loading 500 over 500, it would be better to load width over width because we know that both height and width are the same size. And just like that, these images are perfectly optimized for this screen. If we're gonna open it on a different screen, it's going to work better. And maybe you can also set a maximum width because we know that even on a huge screen of Full HD, we have a maximum width for the post, so it would be better to set here a maximum width as well. But for now, it works well on mobile, and that's all we need for the moment. Let's do the same. Instead of image, let's call it simply image. Let's change here image and here image as well. Let's move the place of a width where we take the width at the top of a component, because I will remove some of the comments and I will keep these two together. Now what I want to do is I want to do the same for the avatar of a user. So here I'm going to call it avatar, and I'm going to create it based on post.user. Let's see, post.user.avatar URL. Let's create the Cloudinary image, and using avatar, let's resize it. But in this case, I know that my image has a width 12, which is 48 pixels. I think that's what we need to do here. 48 by 48. And instead of rendering the image, I'm gonna replace it with advanced image. And instead of source, I'm gonna replace it with Cloudinary image and send there the avatar. Now we are rendering it there perfectly optimized image for that size. In other places, we're gonna load a larger image, but in this feed, we don't need more than 48 pixels because that's the container that we are rendering it in. And in this case for the avatar, I think it would be smart to focus on the face. So how was it? Focus on dot gravity and focus on, and we want to focus dot face. Oh, it's with lowercase. Focus on, focus face. Now our avatars are going to be focused on the face, and it's much better to for an application. Okay, perfect. Sounds good. And these data, they are now coming from our media library. Finally, it was loaded for me as well. And you can see some sample images that you can press. And then here under the public ID, you can press the public ID to copy it and use it, for example, in one of your posts. .json for the image, for example, you can change here to something else, and you're gonna see it appear as an image because we are loading them from this media library of your project. In the next step, we're gonna see how we can upload images to our media library here. Because when a user uploads something, we need to upload it to Cloudinary, and then we're gonna be able to serve it. However, this is actually not the only option, because if you're already storing images on your storage provider, for example on S3 or on other servers, you can actually add Cloudinary on top of that. And whenever a user requests something from Cloudinary, you can set up that the Cloudinary will take the image from your server, will optimize it, and will send the user the optimized image. That's also possible, but we're gonna implement it in a way so that the user uploads it directly on Cloudinary. I think that's much better for this use case. And we know that everything is stored on the Cloudinary is processed and optimized correctly there. So our next step is going to be to upload images to Cloudinary. We can go ahead in the documentation of React Native, and we see here the documentation for image and video upload. To upload an image, it's quite simple. We just call them await upload, and we send the path to the file. So let's see how we can do that. Actually, you know what? Before I move to the next part, I would like to extract, before I do git commit, I would like to extract this cloud name to an environment variable. Because, yeah, I think it's better to set it up for an environment variable and maybe not even expose it to everyone. However, this is a public cloud name, so it should be public. It would be better to specify it using environment variables. For that, we can create a file called .env, and using the prefix expo underscore public, this is important so that your environment variables are public. Let's call it Cloudinary. How is it called? Cloudinary cloud. Cloudinary cloud name even. I'll be very specific. And I'll move a name here. I'll copy the name of our variable, and in library Cloudinary TS, I'll just simply do process.env this variable. We have an error because we have to restart the server. Not with clear, but restart it so that Expo loads the environment variables. Now if I refresh, it should still work. This is coming from something related to how's it called? NativeWind. So if I will simply refresh something, no, doesn't work. I need to kind of refresh something. Maybe in the tabs index, I don't know. 50%. No. Maybe want to trigger something. Here, remove everything, save, and then paste everything. Now it works. Yeah, there are some weird bugs with NativeWind. But we see that Cloudinary is working and we're using environment variables, and I can go ahead and do a git add, git commit -m Cloudinary images. Next step is to upload images to Cloudinary. We do that on this page after we select an image. And when we press share, before saving to the database, the first step is going to be to upload the image to Cloudinary. Let's go to Application, Tabs, New for this screen. And where we have the share button, let's define an onPress that will call a function called share, just share, or share. Let's do it create post to be more descriptive. Share is very general. Now we need to create this function at somewhere at the top here. Let's do it before return. Const create post is going to be an async function because we're going to call some servers, we're going to upload some images. And this function will do two things. We'll upload the image to Cloudinary, and later it's going to save the post in database. Okay. For uploading the image to Cloudinary, let's create another function to separate things. Upload image equal async. And here we need to actually do this upload image to Cloudinary. In create post, we're going to simply call this by doing a wait upload image to Cloudinary. In this function, we have access to the image that was selected by the user. But we first probably need to check if user actually selected an image. So if there is no image, there is nothing to upload, so we can return. However, if there is an image, we need to send it to Cloudinary. To do that, we're gonna use this, for example, to upload an image called image file using the default settings. We are going to copy these options and upload. Let's try that. So we have options with a preset. We have unsigned upload, which I'm gonna explain in a second, and we're calling an upload function that should be imported from Cloudinary React Native. Upload imported from Cloudinary React Native. We also need the Cloudinary configuration, which we exported to a separate file for the exact same reason, not to have to recreate it over and over again. So here we are simply importing it. And instead of uploading the file with this name, let's upload the file image that the user selected. Because that variable image is going to store the URL to the file that we just selected. So we need to upload that file. For the options, here, first of all, let's try without options and see the error. In the callback, we're either going to get the error or the response. Let's console log both of them. Error, and console log response, If I look in here and press share, what's gonna happen? It's gonna take a bit of time, probably. Invalid API key null. That means that in our library, Cloudinary, we didn't specify an API key. So there are two ways of uploading images to Cloudinary. Either the signed upload, which needs an API secret and an API key, and if this method usually should happen either from your server or by using a signature generated on your server. Another option is the unsigned upload, which allows us to upload without the need to generate a signature on your backend. So unsigned uploads options are controlled by a preset, basically a preset that we create ahead of time, and we tell our code like, hey, use this preset. And unsigned upload doesn't need an API key, and it can happen right from the front end. So in order to use this unsigned upload, we need to go back to our Cloudinary, to here, and we need to create a preset. Under dashboard, where are the presets? Let me check. I think it's under the settings. At the bottom, go to the settings. Come on. Let's give it a second. Does Cloudinary work with Expo only? No, Cloudinary actually works with anything. The Cloudinary React Native SDK that we are using, it has a dependencies on Expo modules, but you can have Expo modules in React Native CLI as well. Alternatively, you actually don't need an SDK because you can load these images using a URL. As you saw in the initial part where I showed you that example, you can do all of this resizing, optimization, applying filters and so on in the URL directly. So where I am? Okay, back in the settings, there is the upload presets under the product environment settings. Let's go there. And let's create an upload preset. The name is going to be default. The signing mode, let's do unsigned. And the folder where we want images to be uploaded to, let's do them as, I don't know, media or posts. Let's do posts. And that's everything that we need. Let's click save. And this should create the preset. We can go back to our code in the new. And now, in order to fix that issue, we're going to send these options. We're going to say that, hey, we need an unsigned call with the upload preset called default. The name that we just set here. Maybe it should even be capital D. Now, if I'm gonna press share, most probably we're gonna get into another error that we're gonna fix together. Yes, we have file size too large. And this limitation is only because I'm using a free plan. If you upgrade, you don't have any limitations on the file size, but for the free plan, there is a limitation of maximum to 1 megabytes per file, but I'm trying to upload here a 13 megabytes. So what I can do easily is I can decrease the quality using the image picker library from 1 to 0.5. This will reduce the size of the image. So if I reload the application and go ahead and select the same image and then press share, let's see what's happening here. Let's wait. And in a couple of seconds, we have the response, the success response, and we have the image with a secure URL that we can press and it will open in browser. Here is the image. We can see that image if we go to the Cloudinary, to the programmable media under the media library. We're gonna see it in the media library here as a new asset. This one. And if I click it, we see that it's under the folder posts. And this is the public ID. We can copy it. We can copy the public ID that you should also see here in the response, public ID. And if you go ahead and change in the assets data post.json, the image property of the first item to this public ID, what you should see is the image that we just uploaded from our phone, downloaded and accessed in our application by referencing the ID that was generated. So this is the full flow of uploading a user-generated image, then downloading it as an optimized version here on the device. If we look at what's actually happening, if I open the JavaScript debugger under the network tab, if I will reload, let's find the, look at this image. This is a 1.6 kilobytes image. You cannot even see it because it's 48 by 48. If we look at the waterfall, the waterfall is 129 kilobytes because that's the quality that we need in that instance. However, if we look at the Cloudinary, at the original file, this file has a dimensions of 3000 by 2000 pixels and it's 600 kilobytes. In our case, it's 21 kilobytes. So that's how much? It's a lot less, like 30 times less kilobytes for one single image. Imagine how much faster your application will be, and you're going to send way less data over the wire. And that's going to improve the speed, the performance, and the costs of your infrastructure for your application. And especially for users that are joining from locations when they don't have like a very good internet, then having optimized images are a must. Actually, this is a must for any application. Okay, so that was our uploading, and it was super simple because we just call the upload function, we specify the URL, and we get the response and this one. What I want to do to improve a bit here is I want to be able to return from this upload image the response, right? The response from Cloudinary, so that I can access in the create post the response dot, it shouldn't be any, so if I just simply remove any from here, this response should actually have some data, response dot public ID. So here in the create post, I would like to access response.publicID. The problem right now is that we cannot return it from here. We cannot return response because this code is inside the callback. It's inside the callback. So what we should do is we should create a promise, return a promise, and whenever the callback is being called, we need to either resolve or reject that promise. This is a little bit more advanced, like async await and promises, but let's see what we have to do. We need to, in this upload function, we need to return a new promise. Promise. This new promise will have this function that will give us the resolve and the reject. Now resolve and the reject. Now we need to do some asynchronous logic here, including things like I lost the code, so I need to go back to copy it, copy everything here and put it inside the promise. Now instead of returning, we need to resolve or reject. So here, if there is no image, maybe I'm gonna extract it outside here. I don't need it. Maybe even the options can be outside. And here at the end, I will simply return a new promise. And when the callback happens, I need to either call resolve or reject. That's going to be called depending on if there is an error. I need to reject the promise using the error itself, like the reason. Otherwise, I need to resolve the promise, giving there the response. response. Maybe here if error or if there is no response, then reject it, otherwise resolve it with a response. I don't need the console logs anymore, but that means that now if I await the upload image will give me the promise. I'm gonna await it, and the response is going to be the value that we resolve to. So here I can do console log response or image ID response dot public. Is it to properly type it? I'm gonna check what is the type of this response. It's upload API response, and I can type the promise that we create with this upload API response, which I'm gonna automatically import from a very deep Cloudinary library TypeScript source API upload model params upload params. So now calling this upload image, the response is going to be typed, and I will have the public ID, which I actually needed. Now if I'm gonna go ahead and check the logs, if I go here and upload an image, share, I have an image ID return here. So now we properly promisified the upload function so that we can call like our custom made function for easier management. And this function is going to do all of the logic and will return the response or the error. I want to break free. No, I want to extract this upload image to a separate file, and to do that, I will check what are the things that here make this function depend on the component, and this is the actual image. In order not to depend on the image, let's receive it as a parameter here, file of type string. I'm not going to have image, so I'm going to remove it from here. And here, instead of image, I'm going to use file. And because they have the same name, I'm going to remove it and simplify it to upload file. And that's it. Now, when calling upload image, I can call here image. But I need to make sure that I only do that if there is an image. Or better, if there is no image, I'm going to return. Now my upload image function does not depend on anything here, so I can copy everything from here and move it to maybe some utils functions, or I will just go ahead and put it together with a Cloudinary.ts. Let's put it here, and let's make sure to first export this function, then import the things that the function needs, such as the upload from React Native and this one. Now back to our new .tsx. I'm gonna press command dot or control dot for the suggestions, and I'm gonna import the upload image function from source lib Cloudinary. And I don't need the other things that we imported previously. And now let's see if it still works. If I upload this one, share, let me check here, image ID. If I add it to the image in the post.json and go to the home screen, I see the image there. That means that everything is perfect. So that means that git status, git add, git commit, Cloudinary, upload images. Perfect. So now we saw how to upload, how to manage, how to optimize images using Cloudinary. Super nice stuff and very important for production applications. This is something that we have an accelerator program, and this is something that I recommend everyone. Like at some point when they get on before launching to production, they all encounter issues of slow loading images. I showed previously some custom solutions on S3, but they are much harder to implement compared to the pre-built Cloudinary solution. And the Cloudinary comes with so many more things that we can do on top of optimization, such as using AI, smart cropping, video generation, applying filters, cropping, resizing, and so on. Okay, so that's the Cloudinary step. And the last part for today, we have a backend. Now that we can upload images, what we want to do is save a reference to that image with the caption as a new post in the database. But before that, we need to also allow users to sign up, create an account, so we can link posts with users and actually have a working social media application. So give me just 1 second. I'm gonna grab a coffee. I'm gonna come back and we start working on the backend, because we have 1 more hour. Oh no, we don't have 1 more hour. We have half an hour, right? So I think I'm not going to go. I'm not gonna grab a coffee, and because we have to rush. For the backend, we're gonna use Supabase. Let's open up this documentation that has some information about a Supabase getting started guide. Let's also open supabase.com and start by creating a new project. Let's go to the dashboard and let's create a new project. The project name is going to be Instagram. The database password, choose something that you can remember or copy it somewhere, because we might need it later. I mean, you will need it, but you can also reset it later. Let's press create new project. And now we're gonna wait a little bit for the project to be set up. But while we are waiting, let's go back to the documentation of build a user management app with Expo and React Native. And let's go to the part where they install dependencies. Here at the npx Expo install Supabase React Native Async storage, and they're also installing the React Native a UI library, the React Native elements. I'm going to skip that one and only install Supabase and React Native Async storage. Let's go ahead in our terminal. Let's do clear and let's paste this one. The next step is going to be to create a Supabase client. So in the lib supabase.ts, let's create the client. I'm going to copy this code from here. I'm going to go to our source lib, create a new file Supabase where we are going to configure Supabase, paste this information, and instead of your React here, I'm gonna do process.env.expo_public. Maybe I don't even need native. I just want an environment variable for the Expo public Supabase URL. And similar here with Expo public Supabase unknown key. Now let's go ahead. Here I'm gonna do actually or empty string or empty string. Now let's go ahead and copy this name in our .env equal and the other as well for the second environment. This is the URL and the public key in order to connect to our Supabase instance. Where do we find them? We're gonna go back to the dashboard. By now our project should be set up and we can go to the project settings. Under database in the configuration, under API, the first one is the URL. Let's copy it and put it under the Expo Public Supabase URL. Then under the API keys, we have the public anonymous key. Let's copy it and give it here. Now, I'm not sure if they will take effect instantly, but we can stop the server and restart it so that the new environment are loaded. And we're gonna be able to use the Supabase client that we just created here. If we look at under the table, Supabase will automatically create a Postgres database for us. But under the table, we don't have anything. We can create our tables manually, or we can start with a starter. In the starter, I'm going to go under the SQL editor, under the templates, or under the quick start. I'm gonna choose this user management starter. If we paste it, it's going to load some SQL that will create a profile table with information such as username, full name, avatar, and so on. And it will also create a trigger that will insert a new profile item whenever a new user authenticates, or whenever a new user creates an account. So I press run selected and I can go to table editor, I can reload, and I should see the profile here with a column such as ID, username, full name, avatar, and so on. Perfect. Now, when we're gonna create a new account, a new profile is going to be inserted automatically. Let's continue. To enable authentication, we don't have to do anything. On Supabase, authentication is automatically enabled, and it's also working on the database layer, which is amazing because we can do some kind of connections between authenticated users and some other tables. Let's go in the documentation under the setup a login component, and let's copy this code. Let's go in our project, and the login component in our case is going to be under a screen inside our Expo router. Similar to how we have tabs, I want to create another folder that is going to be responsible for the authentication. So let's create the auth folder and there the index.tsx. Let's paste here the code that we just copied, and let's adjust where we are importing the Supabase from. We are going to import it from this, then source, then lib, then Supabase. We didn't install the React Native elements, so I'm gonna remove them from here, and I'm going to for the button, we have a button that we can import from source components. It doesn't have disabled, but that's okay for now. But for the input, let's change it to a text input for now. The text input doesn't have a label and doesn't have a left icon, but everything else it has. And the same thing for our email. Text input, it doesn't have a label and left icon, but everything else is good. So, how do we see this page? Let's go ahead in the index.tsx, and instead of redirecting to the tabs, let's redirect to the auth for a second. For that, we need to reload, and we're gonna end up on the index here. which is simply rendering a text input for the email, a text input for the password, and two buttons, one for sign in and second for sign up. These buttons are calling two fields, how they're called. Sign in with email and sign up with email, two functions that are simply calling supabase.auth sign up or supabase.auth sign in with password. We don't have a lot of time to go through every single line. But I explain this in our tutorials, and you can stop and look at what's happening here because it's not that complicated. Now, why it doesn't have the stylings? Because I expect the button to have styles. Is it again from this global? Yeah, for some reason. Anyway, I have these inputs that I can style them quickly by going to profile and copying this class name. It would be better to create reusable components by simply giving class names here. Oh, come on. We have something. So let's try to create an account. I'm gonna use my email. First, if I press sign in, we're gonna have invalid login credentials. If I press sign up, we're gonna create an account. By default, we have to validate our email, but if I'm gonna go to authentication under the providers and we select the email, I can disable this confirm email and I can go ahead and create another account now, a new account that will not require us to confirm email, because if we try to sign up with this one, it asks us to validate email first. I'm gonna create another account, sign up, and this one doesn't require us to validate the email. Okay. And if we look in the table profiles, we have two profiles for our users. Now we need to manage the user to manage the user session. For that, we need a context provider where we're gonna store the user session, the user information, and whether he's authenticated or not. Let's go ahead and create a new profile or a new providers folder where we're gonna create the auth provider.tsx. In the auth provider, I'm going to actually give it to you, auth provider, because again, we do not manage to explain the auth provider, to write it line by line. But what this auth provider is doing is defining a context that is exporting two fields. A boolean is authenticated that will tell us whether the user is authenticated or not, and the session. Then in the auth provider, we are querying the session using getSession. We are also listening to session updates. For example, when the user logs out, we are going to update the session. Then we are exporting this as values here so that we can have access through the use of hook to this data such as action and is authenticated. Why do we need is authenticated? Well, first of all, we need to use this auth provider and wrap it around all our screens inside our application layout, in the root layout. We need to wrap this root layout inside the auth provider, and here we're gonna put the stack screen. Come on. Like this. Now all the screens in our application will have access to the auth details. Why do we need that? Well, we need that because in the auth, if I'm gonna create a layout here, tsx, and export default function of layout, and if it's going to return, for example, a stack, what I can do here is I can protect this auth layout and make sure only users that are not yet authenticated can get here. And I can do that by using the useAuth hook from our authentication provider, useAuth from provider, and I can check is authenticated. Let's check if the user is authenticated. Then he doesn't have to be on the auth screens. So we're gonna return a redirect component that will redirect the user back to the href, to the home screen, or maybe to the tabs. Now if I'm gonna refresh, I'm redirected to the tabs because we are already authenticated. And I didn't do that manually, I did it on the layout, and I can do the same on the tabs layout to protect the tabs from users that are not authenticated. And I will do the same here, but in this case I'm going to check if the user is not authenticated. He should never be on the tabs. Instead, he should be redirected to the auth screen. And now if I also go on the tabs profile, under the sign out button, I can go ahead and do on press, we can call supabase.auth.signout. And we're gonna see if I go to the profile and press sign out, we're gonna sign out is going to update the provider. And in this layout, it's going to see that it's not authenticated and is going to automatically redirect to the auth from where we can log back in. Notjust.dev, sign in at sign in. Okay, perfect. And that is our authentication. And we have around not a lot of time for the database. But yeah, authentication, that's everything that we need. For the database, if I do git status, git add, git commit, Supabase, setup, and authentication. Now that the user is authenticated, we can go ahead and create a table where we're going to store the posts of the user. The table is created through the table editor here. Let's go ahead and press create new table. Let's call it posts. And for the columns, we are going to need, let's check the dummy data to see what data do we need here. We need the ID and we need the image. So let's select here image. That is going to be a text, right? Text. The image, let's call it nullable because maybe later you want to add videos as well, so the image can be null. Image URL that was temporary. We need a caption that the user is going to write. Also is going to be a text, and it also can be null. And we need to know who is the user that uploaded that post. For that, we simply will store the identifier, the ID of a profile or the ID of a user. And if we go to foreign keys, we can link the post by user ID to the profile of a user. So here we select profile, and in the public posts, we're going to compare the user ID and link it to the ID of a profile. We need to specify what happens when the profile is updated. We need to also update the post, and when the profile is deleted, we will also delete the user post. Let's save, and we can go ahead and click Save here. This will create the table with these columns, but by default, no one is allowed to do anything, to read, update, and delete. We need to specify who is allowed to do what. For that, we have row level security policies, short RLS. Let's press on RLS, and let's go ahead and create a new policy. There are some templates here, for example, enable insert for authenticated user only. Let's press on it, and I think that's what we want. We want only users that authenticated to be able to insert. Let's press Save Policy, and now they will be able to insert. But we also need to create a new one to enable someone to read. You can enable read access for all users, or you can also, after pressing this one, you can select here authenticated to allow only authenticated users to read. And maybe you can also change the name for auth users. Let's click Save. Now we have two permissions, to select and to insert. Let's go ahead in the table editors under the posts, and under the API docs, we're going to see some examples on how we can do things. For example, how we can insert rows. To insert a row, we need to call Supabase insert. So let's copy this code from here. And we are going to go in the application tabs, new, and under the create post, after we have the image uploaded, we will call the Supabase, which we need to import from our library. We need to target the post table, and we need to insert. What do we need to insert? What columns? We need the caption that we're going to take from the state. We need the image, which should be the public identifier of the image uploaded to Cloudinary. And we need the user underscore ID. But where do we get the user ID? We get it from our provider of provider by accessing session.user. So at the top of this component, at the top of create post, we can take use of, and we can take here the session. Now using the session, we can get the user.id. And these are the columns that we are interested in: caption, image, and user ID. Let's go ahead and see what's happening there. After that is done, I think we can go ahead and do router dot go, and let's go to the tabs screen. Router.push. So if I select this image and I do choose, oh, it opened a lot of let me try like this. Instagram. You can console log the data and error to see what is the response. Let's select this one. Let's do like this. Let's do share. And we are redirected to the home screen. Let's see in our database, in the post, we have a new post with the ID of the image, with the caption, and the identifier of a user that points to the profile with this ID. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted, to upload and save a post to the database. Last step is from the API docs to see how we can read rows. To read the rows, we're gonna do await Supabase from post table select. Let's do that in our index, and let's see how much time do we still have. 10 minutes. I think we managed just in time. So on the, wait a second. On the feed screen, we want to load posts from the database. So for that, we're gonna first need to store the posts in a state variable. Equal use state. When the component mounts in a use effect, what we want to do, use effect, we want to say, hey, fetch posts. Let's go ahead and define this fetch posts async function. That will call Supabase, which we need to import from the library. We'll target the post and we'll select all the fields there. Let's go ahead and not rename it, just work with data and error. Usually we do if error, at least do an alert from React Native.alert to say something went wrong. Otherwise, let's set the data, set post in the state using the data that we received. If I go ahead and do console log data, we're gonna see that, not data, console log posts. We see that we cannot read property avatar URL of undefined. Undefined, that means that if I look at the data, we see that our post has a caption, has created that, has ID, and has user ID, but it doesn't have the user information because in our assets data posts, we actually have a user here. However, with Supabase, it's super easy to query related data. And the related data from a post is the information about the user. In the select is where we specify what columns we want to select. Here we said select all the columns from the post table. But if I do here, hey, also select the data from profiles and select all the columns and then rename it to user, it's going to select the data that is referenced from the profiles table and call it user. And if we look at the console log, reload, we have some warnings, but if we scroll up, come on. I mean, what I'm gonna do, you know what? I'm going to go and select from the dummy data an image URL, for example, this samples people boy hoodie. And in our database, under the profiles, I'm gonna set username to Vadim, and the avatar URL I'm gonna set to these samples. That way, if I go to my application and reload, in the database, I have an avatar and the username. And then I can go ahead and create a new, upload a new image, share it. It's gonna go here and it's not automatically reloaded, but after I press reload, it's going to appear here and it's going to be loaded in the data. And everyone in our application are going to be able to see the post that we upload. Okay, so I'm super happy that we also managed to cover the database. What is left to be done is to connect the My Profile page. Actually, in the documentation of Supabase that I shared with you, they have the exact same page, a bit to the bottom, called account page. So you can check out how they're doing here, how they are loading the profile when you load the page, and then how they are updating the profile. So basically, you're just going to have to copy these three functions and connect them with your state variables to update the profile. Also, go ahead and upload the image of a profile to Cloudinary. And this is going to be the exercise for you, because we already know how to upload images to Cloudinary while creating a post. That's the same should happen here when we change our profile image. Oh, that was a fun project. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Guys, let me know how did you find this this tutorial. And yeah, I hope that this project serves as an inspiration or as a base for your application if you are planning to build a social media application. Because these are the tools, these are the libraries that I would use nowadays if I would build a social media application with React Native and Expo for production. With Expo is the recommended framework for building React Native application. Expo Router makes it super easy to manage the routing and the navigation. On top of that, NativeWind UI allows us for fast development for styling, and especially because I have experience with Tailwind CSS, it's super easy because I remember some of the classes and I can do very fast just by providing the classes. Then with Cloudinary, which is the sponsor of today's video, we can optimize the images to deliver them on the right size. We can apply additional transformations on them, such as filters, cropping, adjustments, rotating, and so on. And with Supabase, we can have a backend as a service, super easy to set up with authentication, database, and everything that you need for this. Okay, guys. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to do a lot more project-based tutorials. And yeah, let me know what other projects would you like me to build in the next time. All right, I'm quite tired after a very long session, but I'm super happy, and I'll catch you next time.